Hello and welcome to Hemlocks and Loons Gear Room. Today we're going to be talking about doing maintenance and possibly some repair on my MSR International stove. Recently, on a overnight trip into the Sylvania wilderness, I had an issue with my stove. It just didn't really, it didn't want to burn well. I was having issues getting my water to completely boil. So this is the bag that I keep my stove in, and I figured I'd just kind of go through here and show you everything that I have in here. So first in this bag we have the pump. This is sometimes called the first generation pump. I like this pump better than the newer pump. I have the newer pump right here. I own a couple of these stoves, and this one's out of my just straight Whisperlite stove. But this is the current version of the pump that they have for this stove. I'm not going to be going over this pump today, but I just wanted to show you that there is a difference. This is the newer style, and this is the older style, and this is the one we're going to be going over. Also in this bag, we have the stove itself. We have the heat reflector and the windscreen, and we won't be needing these at all, so we'll be putting those off to the side. I usually keep a spare lighter in here. And then I have this container here. It's a 4-ounce wide mouth Nalgene bottle. And in here, I keep an assortment of stuff, basically all my repair stuff. This is so I can do any repairs that I need to out in the field. And most of the time I take this lighter and I store it in there so it's out of the way and so I don't lose it. We're not going to be using this at all today, and I'll explain more on that here in a minute, so we'll put that to the side, and that's everything out of the bag. The other thing I have today is this kit. This kit is known as an Expedition Service Kit, and they cost around 50 bucks. I'll put the MSR's website with this item up on screen. The other kit that you can purchase from them is called an annual maintenance kit, and it's about 30 bucks. I've had this stove for somewhere between 25 and 30 years. I bought it in the mid to late 90s, so I've had it for quite a while. I love this stove. I think it's bomb-proof, and besides that, it's, you know, as you're going to see today, it's very fixable, and this can all easily be done out in the field. The one thing that's kind of an issue with this kit is it's for a bunch of different stoves. It's for the Whisperlite Universal, and the Whisperlite International. So it has a ton of stuff in it, and we're not going to need a bunch of this. And if you only own one type of these stoves, you're not going to use a bunch of this, because it has the jets for the different types of fuels for the different types of stoves. It has all of those in here. It has, you know, if you just have this style of pump, you're not going to need one of these. But if you have this style of pump, this is a replacement for this ring. It's the seal for the that goes up against the fuel bottle. This wick, I believe, is only used with the Whisperlite International. I don't believe it's used on the Universal, and it's not used with the regular Whisperlite. So like I said, when you buy this kit, it's for all three of those stoves. So there's stuff in this kit that you may never use. Okay, so let's talk about my pump. I'm pretty sure what the issue is on this pump is that the cup that sits inside the pump that actually moves the air, I think it is most likely dried out. They need to be kept oiled. This style pump originally came with a leather cup. I still have a leather cup in this pump, where the new ones come with a rubber cup to make that seal. The one nice thing about those rubber cups is even when they're dry, they tend to still seal real well, where the leather cup doesn't seal as well. But I think the leather cup is a much better cup overall. And, you know, as long as you keep it oiled, it'll do good. But I think that is the problem. So let's start with this here fuel piece. And as you'll see, it takes quite a bit of turning to get this piece out. Okay, and normally one of the things I do, I got a lot of good light in here, but it's still hard to see down inside these holes. So I got my flashlight with me, and I just take a look in there, make sure there's no grit, grime, or anything else. And the fuel moves through the edge of this, so it's not a bad idea to take something like a paper towel, just so you can get down there. I don't physically see any grime in there, but you never know, and this will tell me for sure. It's got a little bit of dirt on there. I don't know if you can see that really at all. And then I'm going to clean off the end of this as well, make sure those threads are all clean. And then last, you can see this little black piece on here. This is an O-ring. And so you want to inspect these real well, make sure there's no cracks or breaks or any other issues with them. And I don't see any problems with this one. But what you do want to do, one of the items that comes in this kit is this pump cup oil. And we're going to be using this on a bunch of different places. And one of the places we're going to be using it on is on all these O-rings to make sure that, you know, they don't dry out and break down. And so I'm just going to put a little bit of oil on here. Make sure it gets all the way around it. I'm going to move this back and forth so that it gets under it too. And that's all we need to do for that valve. So we're going to screw this back in. Okay, next we're going to go into our kit here and grab our MSR tool. Your stove should have come with one of these initially, and it's a good thing to keep in your kit. I have one in this kit as well, but in case you lost it, this Expedition Service Kit comes with it as well. So next, this little piece right here, off this rounded edge, that's where the fuel line goes into the pump from the stove. So you're going to take the end of this and twist it, and then you're just going to work this out. Just going to check this too, make sure it's all clean and no issues. I'm going to take my light again, look down in it. That looks very clean. Okay, after you take a good look down in there, the other thing that's hard to see in here is there is no ring. So we want to get that out. And what you have in your maintenance kit is just the safety pin. And this is all reason for this being in there is to get these gasket or these O-rings out. And there you go. Again, just like the other one, you want to inspect this. Make sure you don't see any cracks or issues with it. And then again, it's good to put a little bit of oil on it. Insert that back in there. And I found that this tool is kind of nice for helping seat that back to where it was. And that way you can make sure it's not in there funny or at an angle. Then you take this black piece, replace it, and it just twists up and over. Use the tool again to twist that tight, and it's back on there the way it's supposed to be. Next, we're going to go to the pump itself and just raise this up, twist it, and pull up. And so there you can see the cup, and just as I had suspected, this thing is as dry as a bone. I need to inspect it first, make sure it's got no cracks in it, which surprisingly, with it being as dry as it is, it does not. So before I oil that, I'm going to check the cylinder that it rides in. Again, I'm going to use my flashlight and just take a good look down in there. And I just see some leather fibers, and with that breath of air there, I just blew them all out. So I'm going to take some oil, squeeze it in here. Not a ton, but just enough to get those sides nice and oiled. And then I'm going to take this cup. I'm going to start by just going around the edge, and as you can probably see right there, it's already turning color where I'm putting the oil. We want to do that all the way around, get that nice and oiled. And I'm starting on the top where the open fibers are. I'll get down inside there, and then I'm slowly going to go around the outside here and make sure this is well oiled. Okay, that's looking really good to me. Let's get that back down in there. And then you're going to do the same thing. This piece that slides on here has a little pin on it. You just want to line that up, and once it's down in there, you can use the handle itself to twist it and get it in there. So I got oil all over my fingers now. Let's get that off. And so next we're going to move to the bottom. Again, this piece might be a little hard to see. It's got a little tab that sticks up. It's great again to use this tool. That's one of the things you can use this little center slot for, is put that right on there and twist it. It's also got a little knob that runs through this little track here. So you want to get that aligned and then use your tool again to kind of help pry this off. You want to be careful with this piece because there is a spring and ball under here. So there's the piece that comes out. And then there's a spring in here, and I'm going to use the safety pin again to pull the spring out. You don't want that running away either. Don't lose that. And then down inside of here is a little rubber ball. It looks just like that. Move it back here so you can see it. And again, this is something else, because it is rubber. You want to inspect it and make sure that there's no pitting, no tears, no cracks, any of that kind of stuff in it. And I'm not seeing any of that. I'm also going to take my light and look down in here. That looks all nice and clean. So all that's left to do then is take the ball, and we're going to put a little bit of oil on it. It's running away from me here. I'm going to place that back down in there. I'm going to place the spring and then this black cap. Line those pins up, push it down, try to twist, and then finish it up with the tool and make sure it's tight. Now that ball and spring act as a one-way valve. So when you push down and you force air down into this pump, it forces the air out this tube and into your fuel bottle. So one of the things you want to do is look at this tube, make sure there's nothing in it that isn't clogged. And from here it looks good. Do a couple of pumps. And I can definitely tell that air's coming through this now. And before I started this video, I did pull this out and just kind of take a look at it, and I wasn't hearing that air come through. So I think we may have already fixed the problem. Okay, we got two more things on the pump to take a look at before we move on to the stove. The first thing is this little metal piece here. This tube is the pickup tube for your fuel. So when it's inside your tank, your pump sits this way, and this sits down on the bottom of the tank to pick up the fuel. This little metal cone piece here is a screen. You can get it to come off. It's pretty small, so you want to be careful anytime you're doing that. And just kind of take a look at this and see if it looks like it's clogged up at all. I do want to be careful with that oil that I had on my fingers before. You don't want to get that in there because that'll clog it up. But this one looks pretty good. I'm going to make sure it gets back on here and that it's seated nice and tight. The last thing we need to talk about is right up here, and it's probably going to be a little bit hard to see in this video, but there is another O-ring that sits right here. And that's so when this screws onto the bottle, this is what seals it. And you want to check that one as well. This one's a bit seated in here, so it might take a little work to get it out. I'm going to start with the safety pin and see if I can work it out of there. Maybe not. I do have this tool which is specifically for working with gaskets. That'll allow me to grab onto it, pull it up. I'm just going to work that around. And again, you just want to take a good look at this, make sure there's no pitting, no dry rot, it's not tearing, no cracks. And this one looks just fine as well. So we're going to just replace that and put it back down on here, make sure it's all seated in there. So one thing that I'll mention is we didn't replace a single O-ring. And I bet it's been 8+ years since I replaced an O-ring. But this kit does have all the rings in it. So before we move on to the stove, we're going to test this pump. But the other thing is that comes with this O-ring is that on your fuel bottles here, this cap also has an O-ring. And the service kit comes with 2 big black O-rings. One is for the top of your pump, the other one is for this. And this is a fairly new bottle, and I just recently had checked this O-ring and it's good. Now this bottle that I'm using is completely empty. It hasn't had fuel in it ever. And so I'm just going to put this in here to test it. That's about 15 pumps, and so this should be pressurized now, and so when I go and release this, we should hear air coming out of it. So that's great. That's a lot more air than I got out of it when I brought it home the other day. So that's your fuel pump, and that's done, and now we're going to move on to the stove. Okay, so here's my stove. So let's start digging into this guy and make sure it's all good to go. One of the nice things is these all have shaker jets. Let's see. You hear that noise where it's kind of popping back and forth? That's the shaker. And what that thing does is it runs a little needle up into your jet to help clean it out. And so most of the time, your jet clogging up is not going to be an issue if you've got that shaker in it. First thing we're going to do is flip it over, and this cup that's on the bottom, we're going to unscrew that. And there's nothing I really need to do with this, so we're just going to set it to the side. And just so I don't lose the wick, I'm going to take that and set it to the side. And then next we're going to pull this out of here. This whole piece will lift up and out. And then you can slide it through here if you really want to. I don't usually do that. I don't see a need. I usually keep it in here. But this is your jet. And so the first thing I'm going to do is pull that apart, make sure everything looks good in there. Again, we're using the MSR tool. And it has this spot right here on the end that fits that nut on the jet. And so what you're going to do is turn this upside down once you get it all the way unscrewed and pull it down. And the reason you're going to do that is this shaker jet. Or shaker needle, sorry, not shaker jet. And that's the needle right there. Let's see if you can see just that little pin that sticks up there. And that pin comes from the opposite direction, but it goes through the little hole in the top of this, in the jet. The other thing that comes in your kit is this little tool. I don't know if you again see it's got two little pieces there. And what we can do first is stick this in this way. So you get that in there. You just work it around, make sure that that orifice is open, which it is. And I'm going to take the shaker jet and put it back in there so I don't lose it. Needle up, obviously. And then I'm just going to inspect this. Let me get some of this carbon off my hands. I'm just going to inspect this and make sure everything looks good, which it does. Look at the bottom of the cup. That all looks good. There's not a ton of carbon buildup or anything inside of there. So what I'm going to do is again put this upside down and screw this way. That way I don't lose that shaker. Once I got it on, I'll flip it back over again and tighten it up. And I made a mess. One of the things you don't want to do is these all will slide off. You don't want that to happen. Not that it's a bad thing, it's just a pain in the butt. And now I've got my got this all stuck and I'm getting more carbon on my fingers. So. And you want to make sure you put these on right too. I just put it on upside down. Okay. Okay, and then you got to make sure that you're sliding this back in through the notch. There's a notch on this side. I don't know if I showed you that, but it should be apparent if you take this apart. There's a little notch right here, and this slides in it. So you got to not only make sure that that generator loop goes up through the hole in the top of the stove, but that this piece is fitting into here right as well. Once you get that back on, you can throw your wick back on and then screw the cup back on. Okay, so now that we got that all together, there is one last item to work on. This one often gets overlooked, and it's this wire. And this wire here helps the fuel along, and when you pull it out, it'll clean it. So you have these three little holes. Let me see, make sure you can see that. There's three little holes here. And I believe the middle sized one is the one you're going to use. And so you slide that over it, crank it at a little bit of an angle so it bites down on it. So you want to get a good grip on that and just rip it out. I don't know if you just saw that or not. But once you get this wire out, you want to just do an inspection on that. I usually just take a rag, run it down both sides, make sure it looks good. One of the things you could do at this point is run some fuel through here without the line in it. That way if there's anything clogged up in here, you potentially can flush it out. If you do that, do it before you put the jet back on and with the stove still apart down here, because it's obviously not going to, any of that junk is not going to make it through that jet, and so you want to wash it out before you have the jet on it. I'm not seeing a whole lot of issue with this cable, and I wasn't seeing any issues with the jet to make me think that it was getting clogged at all. So I've got this out. Now comes kind of the tough part, which is putting this wire back in. And I seem to always have a problem at this point. You can always use this tool as well, do the same thing. If not, you can use a pair of pliers as well. I just don't like, you don't want to cause any problems with this braided wire. So if you do use a pair of pliers to help push it back in, be gentle. I've had problems with these before, but not this big of an issue. Okay, took me a little extra pushing there, but I finally got it. It's all good to go. So I figured maybe it wouldn't be a great idea to end this video without actually firing this thing up. So we're out in the garage because it's been a bit sprinkly, and I'm sorry if the wind is causing much of an issue, but let's get this thing fired up and see how she's running. So I filled that cup up a little bit fuller than I really wanted to. And we're just going to turn that so to make sure that the flame's heating up that tube. And there we go. She is definitely rocking much better than she was when we were camping. And everything looks good. Hey, if you're enjoying this video, please consider going down below and hitting that thumbs up button. And if you want to see more of my my content and have it suggested to you more often in your feed, please consider giving us a subscription, and we got plenty more to show you. See ya.